The Victorians is another popular topic used in primary schools. I'm sometimes asked by very young children whether I'm a Victorian. Not quite. And here's an example of a very old toy. I don't know whether it was Victorian or not. It's certainly a vintage or retro toy. It's a spring woodpecker. So here's how to make it. You need some 2mm welding rod. It is available from my supply service, and we're going to tap this into a base. Now to make it a bit easier to glue it on, I'm just going to hammer it into this pulley here. Go. And now I can glue that down onto, it could be a block of wood, something quite heavy, or this large wheel. Just going to glue that down. Now the woodpecker works because it's on a spring, a small spring, and as it oscillates the friction builds up and then suddenly releases, so it moves down in jerks. So we're going to make our own spring out of ordinary single strand electrical wire that we use in primary schools. It's also available from our shop, and I'm going to strip the PVC coating off of a wire stripper. I have to do this quite carefully. You have to be careful not to cut through all of the wire. This piece is about 15 centimeters long. Doesn't have to be exactly 15 centimeters. And then I'm going to wind it around the metal rod to make a spring. So we wind it round. This is only copper wire with a tin coating, so it's fairly soft. There we are. I'm told that you can make these using the spring inside a biro pen. So if you have one of those handy, it's worth trying. So there we are. I don't know if you can see, I've made a spring here, and I'm just going to cut off the ends. I don't know if I've got some cutters handy. I wonder if the scissors will cut through. Yes, they will. Just going to cut the ends off, so we've got a small spring here. Now the slider that slides down is a piece of wooden dowel. You can get wooden dowel. This is about 16mm diameter. The diameter is not too important as long as it's roughly this size, and you can get dowel like this from your local DIY store. And I've drilled a hole through it with a 2.5mm drill, so the hole needs to be slightly bigger than the 2mm rod. That is quite important. If it's much bigger, it won't work, and it should slide fairly easily up and down the metal rod. I know primary schools quite often don't have drills, but I'm sure you could find somebody who would make that for you. Next we get the spring, and I'm just going to glue the spring to the side of the wooden dowel with a hot glue gun. Just going to glue that on like that and wait 10 seconds to let that dry. And then when that's dry, we need to have something heavy on the end. The woodpecker itself, a piece of paper, wouldn't be heavy enough, so I'm going to glue a wooden wheel onto the end of the spring. I hope I'm not rushing this. There is just a little bit of spring sticking out that I don't need. Try and cut that off. There we go. And I'm going to glue the wheel on like that, so it's sideways on. So a blob of glue on the edge of the wheel, and glue that onto the end of the homemade spring. And again we need to wait, give that 10 seconds to dry, to cool down. Can't really rush this part. There we are. I hope I haven't rushed it. And now let's slide this on. I'll move it down so that you can see it. There we are. I don't know if you can see that. You can very carefully bend the spring to make sure that it's vertical, and then flick the spring and just make sure that the mechanism is working. That's working beautifully. I don't know if you can see that. Yep, that's working fine. Now we don't want it to go right to the bottom, otherwise the bird's tail is going to get squashed up. So I'm just going to slide on a piece of tubing as a spacer. Then we'll slide the spring mechanism back on again. And I think it's rather dangerous to have the sharp edge of the metal rod sticking out. So I'm just going to bend that over into a hook. This is something that would have to be done by an adult. It's too difficult for children to do. So I've just bent that over, so that's a much safer end for the metal rod. Finally, we need to put a bird on, ideally a woodpecker. I found there are plenty of pictures on the internet, if you go via Google Images, of woodpeckers, and I found a picture. I copied it and pasted it and then flipped it using one of the many paint programs, so that you've got the bird on both sides. So all you need to do is to glue your bird onto here. Here we are. And you could leave it there, but I like to have a double-sided bird. And there we go. And if I had more time, I'd stick the head and the tail together. So that's our woodpecker spring toy. Now I thought that was the end of this project until I looked on the internet. I googled woodpecker toys and found a site called sciencetoymaker.org. I think it's in America, and they had a much easier way of doing it, which I'd like to show you. All they've done is they've got a piece of card, and they get the children to draw a very simple bird. It doesn't have to be as good as this, just a piece of paper here with a bird drawn on it, and then they've stuck a piece of jumbo straw onto the end of the card. I've actually got a piece of bendy straw stuck on as well, because I was experimenting to see if bendy straw worked. Both kinds of straw work, so either a piece of bendy straw or a piece of jumbo straw. It's about 3 centimeters long, and then all they've done is they've got a long elastic band. This is a number 24. Cut it, thread it through this piece of straw like that. It's being a bit stubborn. There it is. And then they hold the band, stretch it, and hey presto, the woodpecker does exactly the same thing. So it's the band itself that's acting as a spring. So there's 2 ways of doing it. My complicated way, perhaps for older children could try that, but I think that this idea, I think quite young children could have a go at that. So good luck making spring woodpecker toys.